You're listening to the Money Monopolizers podcast, helping you take control of your financial destiny. It's about time that we invest more in our financial literacy and work towards building generational wealth. If you think you're ready to do the same, then you've come to the right place. Alex, Marlon, y'all ready? Let's get this bread.
Previously on the Money Monopolizers podcast.
BRRRR investing is B with 4 R's. So the B stands for buy, and then the 4 R's are rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Pretty much it's just a different way of looking at how to purchase different rental properties. And so you start off by buying a house or buying a dilapidated property. Then you're gonna just perform a renovation on it, and after you have renovated it, then you start renting it out. So now you have a tenant that's going to be paying for all of the expenses that occur, including the mortgage and all of the utilities or whatever. And then you're going to refinance it. You pretty much refinance with a normal conventional 30-year mortgage. And then that money is sufficient enough to pay off your previous lender, as well as any money you may have put into the deal. And then repeat is the last R. It's pretty much starting the entire process over, because this is just like honestly, one of the most efficient ways of purchasing rental property and being able to scale your entire portfolio, because that refinance process is enabling you to be able to repeat this process over and over. So,
as an example, let's just say $80,000 beat up property. That's the price. ARV is $150,000. ARV is after repair value. That essentially means what is the property worth after it's repaired. So let's say the repairs to get the property up to the point that it can be worth $150,000 is $30,000. Let's say that you can rent it for $1,300 a month. That was the buy, $80,000. Rehab, $30,000. Rent, put tenants in there at $1,300. Then refinance. Actually, I don't even think a lot of people know what a refinance is. It's essentially taking an existing mortgage, paying it off, having a bank pay it off, and you acquiring a new mortgage from a different lender. Then there's a bunch of reasons people might do that. In this scenario with the BRRRR investing, you can refinance because the bank that you would go to the bank, and essentially what you're going to do is ask them, hey, I want to get a mortgage on this property. Because remember, you didn't buy it with a mortgage because it was beat up. You can't buy a beat up house with a mortgage. The bank, they are not fools. They know they're not going to obviously lend you 100%. They're not going to lend you everything. So they'll lend you 75% of the value, right? 75%
ARV.
Yes, exactly. 75% of that ARV, which in this case was $150,000. So in this case, 75% loan to value of $150,000 is $113,000, right? So that means I bought the house for $80,000 and I put $30,000 in there to repair, right? So that means I'm all in for $110,000, right? Now I went to the bank and said, hey, can you give me a mortgage on this property? Because if I have an asset, they'll loan against that asset because that's their collateral, right? So they'll give me back. I have $110,000 in. They give me back $113,000. Do the math. What does that mean? That means I made $3,000 and I got all my money back, right? I got my $110,000 and I made $3,000 on top. So the house could very well be cash flowing and you own it, right? So that's the refinance part of it. And then the final step, now that you got your cash back, is going to be to take that money that you got back and go do it again because you got your money out. And that's the beauty of the strategy. Essentially, you can keep recycling that money, right?
I think this is kind of like the seed planter episode. Like we're literally planting a seed and pretty much expanding your context and introducing new information into your mind. So instead of just going with the traditional methods of putting 20% down onto a rental property that you want to buy, like an investment property, now you at least know that there's a new way of going about doing it. So this is more so an inspiration and changing of your mindset type episode. And then next week we'll start expounding more into the details of like how to go through each individual step, started from B unto the last R. So we'll go through it much more thoroughly, and so you'll have a much stronger concept of how to implement this strategy into your investment toolbox.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, y'all definitely stay tuned for next week. There will probably, next week's episode will be packed full of a lot of value and information that you do not want to miss if you want to get into real estate investing. Now, I think we should, break down every aspect of the BRRRR method. We'll try not to get in too much in depth, but like I said, we love talking about this, and this is kind of like one of the, best ways to build wealth. So, we could do a 6-hour episode on this if we want it, but we won't. We will refrain from that. So the first part of the BRRRR method is the buy, right? So buy. The way I like to think of the buy part of the BRRRR method is essentially like you're buying equity, right? In the same way you could put 20 to 25% down, you have to be able to, and there's a lot of things that are encompassed with buying, right? But the biggest part is essentially, being able to buy the property at a right price. And in terms of that, it doesn't necessarily need to, in terms of, the money, I guess I'll talk about that first. It doesn't need to be your own cash, right? So in that example earlier, it's not, so you don't need to have $110,000 to put up, right? Obviously, people don't do that because it would be even worse than 20 to 25% down. So, you just need to have cash, someone's cash. Cash needs to come from somewhere. And there's a bunch of places it can come from. And like I said, it can't come from a traditional bank, though, because banks aren't going to lend on houses that need work, right? So you can't necessarily finance this from a traditional bank. You cannot go get a mortgage on a house that needs work, right? So what are some of the other methods? Well, the easiest method is cash. So if you do have the cash, that is, I think, honestly, what you should use if you trust yourself and you trust your judgment. That is the best case scenario because, you're literally just going to be recycling your own cash, right? You can use your 401k. That's one method. If you are able to, pull money out of that and use it to invest in real estate, self-directed RRAs, those kind of things, you can actually use them to invest in real estate. I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not giving you advice on that, but it is a method or an alternative available to you. Another method is using a hard money lender, right? So we have talked about a hard money lender in episode, I don't remember what episode. I think it was like episode, I don't remember. It was the one we said analyzing a deal. I think that was like 16, but hard money lenders are essentially companies that specialize in lending on investment properties, right? So they essentially lend based on the deal. They don't lend on, your credit or your personal stuff, right? They don't care about that. If it's a good deal, they'll lend to you because they're investors themselves. They just want people to go get the deals and they'll lend on them if they're good deals, right? So, but they typically, depending on where you are, depending on the lender you use, they will lend you 60 to 75% of the ARV. So there's kind of two components of that. It's with the buy, and then you obviously deal with that with the refinance. I'm not going to get too much in detail of that. If y'all want to, we'll talk more about that in episode 16, I think. So you could go listen to that. But that is essentially a method you could use to circumvent the, you not having cash or whatever. Another method, and this is what I have started, taking a liking to and using, is private lenders or OPM, right? OPM is other people's money. So what is OPM? Essentially, that is relationship-based lending. We talked about this in episode 2. That's essentially someone with cash that wants a better ROI on their money. They want a better return on their money than what they're getting in their 401k or their bank account, right? So they say, hey, I'll lend you that money if you can, pay me 10%, 8%, whatever that y'all agree on, 15% if you're crazy. They'll lend it to you. You use that to buy the house. You go through the steps in the same way. You pay them back off the refinance. So that's my favorite method. That is what, we started using in order to scale the portfolio. And I think, at this point, that is probably the only method I will ever use, just because it's amazing. So, that being said, if anybody, is out there that is interested in lending, any cash or any, money from their 401k and getting a better return on their, money than what they're getting in their 401k or their bank, please, feel free to hit us up and we can definitely put your money to work. We are very have a good amount. We have a lot of experience in this now. We're obviously very knowledgeable about the topic, and we can definitely get you a great ROI. I would just say right now, for an example, somebody is lending 116. She lent 116,000 to the business, and she's getting $1,000 a month in interest payments. So that is something that is available for other people if that's something that they would be interested in. And obviously based off of the amount you lend, we can look at the terms. But yes, I did want to mention that.
By the way, I also want to mention that if she had kept that 116,000 in her bank, she'd be making a grand total of $11.06 per year. Just to put that in perspective, so you can increase your return from $11.60 per year to 1,000 per month. So keep that into consideration too.
Facts. So yes, I love OPM. Anyways, but yeah, this whole buy, those are some of the benefits. I think this strategy, this step is honestly the most important step for a bunch of reasons. But this is where you kind of make money or create equity. That's why I said you're buying. I mean, yeah, you're buying equity, not really creating equity. I mean, in a way, well, because think about it, right? If you are buying houses for less than what it's worth, then you are essentially buying equity, right? And so that's a reason I love this step is because it's the step with the most control, right? You can control this more than you can control a lot of the other steps, especially when you talk about refinancing, renting, right. Rehabbing. It's a lot more things out of your control, but you control what you pay for the property. No one is going to make you overpay unless you're just a fool. So, if you understand that, then you'll be good money there, because when you can buy houses for less than what they're worth, you have instant equity. So that being said, you cannot overpay for properties. You cannot. If you overpay, the BRRRR method, you just cooked yourself. That's the worst thing, one of the worst things you could do, right? So a way you can know, it's not the only way, but a way you can know what your max purchase price can be, it's going to be based off of your rehab costs, your ARV, and also how much you are actually willing to leave in the deal, right? In that example earlier, remember I said 80K was the first example. If you can get it for 80K, great. But if you can get it for 95K, you might have to leave 12K in the deal. Are you comfortable? Are you able to leave $12,000 invested into that property? Or do you need to pull all that cash out so you can either pay people back, or do you just want to have all the cash out? So you just, that's how you need to know. And that's very important to know. And then also with this too, this is really the step where it's like, this is where you got to be good at finding good deals, right? And knowing what a good deal looks like. Because at the end of the day, if it don't work on paper, it's not going to work in real life. So you need to make sure that when you run the numbers and you do deal analysis, that it's going to work. So you need to learn how to analyze a good deal. That I know we did talk about in episode 16. So that's definitely, what you need to do. And I think that's, kind of what I think is some of the most important stuff with the buy part. What do you think about that, the B in the buy, in terms of like most important stuff?
Yeah, to reemphasize a lot of what you said, this part is literally the most critical and the most important phase of the 5 steps. And that's because, like you mentioned, this is the part where you have the most control, and this is going to literally make or break the entire rest of your deal. So I wanted to go into a few things that you have to think about as far as what you need to control when it goes into the buy portion. Like, this is everything that's leading up into the actual purchase itself. A lot of preliminary things go on. So first of all, you have to know who to know, as well as understand what's involved with this process before you get into buying. So like with who you need to have a team around you. And I know we talked about a lot more about this. I'm not even going to go into depth with this, but episode 13, we talked a lot about building your team, your real estate team. We talked about having an agent, having or wholesaler. So pretty much somebody who's going to find the deal, who be able to provide leads to you. Then you need to have a lender, like both the acquisition lender and the refinance lender, have both of them already thought about and know who you're going to be working with. Contractors, because during that rehab phase, you're going to need somebody that's going to be helping you out with the renovations, or pretty much performing the renovations, and you're going to oversee them for the most part. And then lastly, it's like a property manager or a general manager for the property itself once you are trying to rent it out. This is like a optional one, but you also want to be able to account for a property manager, because if you scale your business to say 100 units, do you want to manage each and every one of those? Most likely not. So because of that, you want to at least be able to account for property managers, know some good property managers, maybe not initially, but you want to definitely account for them when you are performing your analysis early on. Yeah. And then secondly, I mentioned you need to know what's involved with as far as the numbers. Now, I'm big with numbers myself. That's actually my role when it comes to all of our deals. So I can talk about this all day myself personally, but I would say the big numbers you need to know when you're looking at a BRRRR deal, the first and foremost, ARV. That's like the most critical one, and that's going to be the one that's most skewed by your wholesalers or the people that's trying to bring you a deal, because honestly, they have ulterior motives compared to what the actual investor does. The wholesaler, they're going to just try to pump it up, be like, hey, man, this one got an ARV of 200,000. it probably got an ARV of 150. If you got to go verify that for yourself, and that means that your loan amount that you get after the fact is going to be very different. The refinance loan is going to be very different. So you got to do your own due diligence when it comes to figuring out what the ARV is. Also, you need to figure out renovation costs. You got to know what those are. That's going to be by using your contractor, like performing a walkthrough. Holding costs. We didn't mention these two: holding costs and closing costs. Those are also going to be factors that are incorporated when you're actually doing this. When you're doing a deal, so closing costs are going to be what you pay when you first purchase the property and actually when you sell it. And then holding costs are going to be what's the cost of holding this property each and every month. So that's going to be paying the lender like their monthly payment each month, and that may also be utility bills and stuff like that. So you got to take all that into consideration too. And I mean, it's not a tedious process. It's not like a hard process. It's just that things you have to be mindful of overall. Yeah. And I guess I'll just hone in on the main two numbers other than ARV. ARV is ultimate important, but other two numbers are purchase price and rehab. I mentioned those already, but I just had to reemphasize them because these are ones that are like most negotiable as far as and I guess these are also ones that will make or break your deal. Because if you don't, so those are the main three you need to keep in mind: purchase price, rehab, ARV. If I know those three, that's what we gave earlier in our examples. If you know those three, the majority of the work is done now. And if these three numbers don't match and are not a good deal for you,
run.
You need to be willing to walk away. I promise you, no deal is better than a bad deal because you don't want to sit here with the ARV. What you thinking of the ARV is going to be 200 and it comes back being 120. You're going to be sitting here hurt because you think about to get a refinance of 150,000 and you end up getting a refinance loan of 90,000. Now that's a $60,000 difference in what you thought you were going to get. And I don't know where that money coming from, but that private money lender, that hard money lender, they want their money back. So you're going to be cutting some grass soon, it sound like, or driving Uber. So that's why I said those three are the most important, or the ARV is most important, than also knowing what your purchase price and rehab are, because that's going to overall encompass what you're answering the hard money lender for, private money lender, or whatever you're getting your money from. And I guess I'll talk about a little bit how to get the correct ARV, because we talk about it so much. People like, bro, how do you even figure out what the ARV is? And so that comes through a comparable analysis. And so in plain English, that's pretty much looking at different houses that have sold around the area of the house that you're trying to purchase currently. And so you may go on to like Zillow, you may go to Realtor, or you can actually use an agent and figure out like what houses have been for sale in the past, and the agents can actually provide an actual comparable analysis report for you. Now, I will say, if you're going to use an agent, you might also want to consider using that agent as your seller's agent if you ever choose to sell the property. Because if you're going to just go to an agent and say, hey, man, I need you to run this comp analysis for me to see what these houses have been selling for in this area, he might be like, oh, you plan on selling it after? Oh, no, bro, I plan on renting it. I mean, so what's in it for me at the end of what's in it for the agent? You got to think about that. So you may tell them, hey, I'm doing other deals. Also, I'm going to do a couple of flip deals, and I'm going to be able to use you as my seller's agent on those deals in particular. And so you got to be able to at least throw them a bone and be like, hey, I'm going to scratch your back, you scratch mine, stuff like that. And that's if you're using agents. You can also use, like I mentioned, the MLS, different apps like Zillow or Realtor. Now, let me tell you this first. Hold on. If y'all are using Zillow, do not freaking use that dang Zestimate. So everybody, I promise you, everybody's gonna go on Zillow and be like, oh shoot, they already telling me what this house is worth right here. They have a Zestimate. Well, my job is done. I got the ARV. We good to go. Nah, bro. The Zestimate is like one of the worst things you can use. Now, it'll be accurate in some areas, but because of its inaccuracy in the other areas, I just don't even bother with it. Like because it would literally be 30,000, 40,000 off compared to what the actual ARV in that area is of that particular house. So you have to consider metrics such as location. I would say location is probably the biggest one, honestly. And I always think of our example that we talk about, like here in the Pearland. If you look at Pearland Parkway as one street, it's like literally a divide line between middle class houses and upper middle class houses. And so literally the house you are looking at is probably in a middle class area where the ARV may be, say, 250,000. And at that square footage, if you look across the street, that same square footage house will probably be worth $350,000 to $400,000. And so just keeping that in mind, you're like, okay, location is key in order to you had to just knowledge of the area and knowing where your house where your target house is located at is critical, and understanding how different highway lines or different street lines are dividing different areas pretty much. And I guess other things to look at is price per square footage, the age of the house. You want this stuff to be synonymous when you're looking at different comps around the area. You want to see a similar square footage house, see a similar age house, and you want to know other things like what are the finishes in that house? Are they granite countertops? Are they tile flooring, or do they have laminate countertops and carpet? You want to know those type of things because that's going to also dictate what you will probably need to do in the house that you're renovating in order to get up to the ARV that you're looking for. And I mean, it's a lot of factors that go into it overall, but you want to keep these things in mind when you're trying to figure out what the ARV of the home you're trying to buy is.
Man, those are a lot of good points too, especially, because I know like this is what Marlon focuses on in our business in terms of like the deal analysis and stuff. So when he says these things, listen, those things are very important, especially when please don't use this estimate. That's the dumbest thing you can use. Like, that is a noob move to use this estimate. And I know people have done it. Like, come on. The thing about this estimate real quick too is that they literally create that thing. And I recently found this out, like, I don't know, a few months ago, that that values, number one, it's a proprietary algorithm that Zillow owns that only they can like know what it actually uses. But one factor that goes into it is literally how much people view the house on the app or on the website. Like, so literally if it has more saves or views or something like that, they're going to say that his estimate will be higher, which in reality, that don't mean nothing. That don't mean anything. You telling me that people looking at the house on the app means it's a higher ARV? Tell that to my appraiser. Right. Don't tell it. I don't want to see that. Come on now. But yes, please listen to that. And also listen to, about dividing lines, because that's very key. We've seen that in many instances where, literally like a ditch or like a, arterial street literally changes the ARV of a house because it's in a different neighborhood. And we'll kind of talk about.
I thought about an even more crazy one. So in Detroit, they have so where my grandmother lives at, it's like the property values are probably around like 10 to 20,000. I ain't gonna lie, it's very low. There's literally a historic block that's like 2 blocks over that the houses are appraising for like 300,000. And so if you are looking at my grandmother's area and think you about to get $300,000 worth of house, you are sadly mistaken. Yep. But that's all about location though. So you got to know those type of things. And I think that's a good reason to have an agent also to help you out, especially if you're in a new area. Now, if you know the area, you can know those type of things because you are literally your own boots on the ground. Yeah. Somebody that's there and able to see how different areas look and how like the feel of the area and see how well kept they are in comparison to other areas.
Mm-hmm. It just goes back to having a team. Very, very, very important. So anyways, that's the buy. That's the most important aspect. So we have to spend the most time on that one. We won't spend as much time on the other ones, but that is the most important aspect because all the preliminary stuff goes into that. If you cook that part, you might as well just not even do the BRRRR because that's the most important part. Next part, the next R of the BRRRR is rehab. So rehab, like I said, buying is buying equity. Rehab is essentially creating equity in a way, right? Because essentially through a rehab, what you're doing is you're adding value through the rehab, right? Have you ever, we hear always the term forced appreciation. There's natural appreciation, which is this market growth. Your value increases just because over time, property values rise, or you have forced appreciation, which is you increasing the property value due to you doing a rehab on the property, right? So forced appreciation or rehabbing a property is essentially creating equity or making equity in a way. So, that's kind of how I think of it intuitively. And these banks, the reason you're able to refinance, which we'll talk about, of course, when we get to that, but that's the reason you're able to is because, banks lend based on value, right? So that house that you own isn't beat up anymore. So the banks lend on the value of the house because or they lend based off the value on the house because when it's not beat up, now they can lend on it. So anyways, but like I think some of the ways to create equity through a rehab is having nicer finishes on the house, when I say that, that's essentially like, granite counters, tile, paint, new flooring, those things that are, cosmetic that people see and it's like, oh, I like that. It adds value to the house. One of my favorite things, or one of my favorite ways to add value is, opening up walls or opening a floor plan, right? Because essentially, if you're not selling a house with an open concept floor plan, I don't know what year you're in. If you're not rehabbing it with if you're doing a big rehab and you're not putting an open concept floor plan, then you might as well say, yeah, I'm okay with not getting top dollar for this house. So yeah, that's one way. Another way, I wouldn't say the best, but one of the most hidden like gems is like adding bedrooms, right? Because essentially what that does is, you create instant value. Because think about it, wouldn't a 3-bedroom house be more valuable than a 2-bedroom house? And wouldn't a 4-bedroom house be more valuable than a 3-bedroom house? Would a 5-bedroom house be more valuable than a 4-bedroom house? When it gets to that point, a lot of other factors play into place, like location and those things. But that doesn't scale linearly. It's not saying that, I got a 9-bedroom house, so that's more valuable than an 8-bedroom house. No, nobody needs 9 bedrooms. No buyer cares about having 9 or 8 bedrooms, so you're not going to get any extra dollars for that. But having 3/2 or 4/3, you will get extra value because of that. And one way you can really tell, shout out to this is one of those other things. Oh, I'm not even gonna say where I got this.
Forget that shout out.
yeah, I'm just keep to myself. But what I was gonna say is one way to be able to tell if you can add extra value is by looking at the square footage of the house. If it's a 1,100, 1,200 square foot house and it has 2 bedrooms, there's definitely room in there to add a 3rd bedroom, possibly even a 4th, but definitely a 3rd. So, you just got to, at that point, you'd have to kind of manipulate the floor plan a little bit. And then you'd have to see, am I going to get the return based off of that improvement? How much would that rehab cost? And then, in most cases, you should get significant bump in value for having a 3-bedroom house over a 2-bedroom house. So, but that being said, not all repairs do add value, right? There are some repairs that just, you might have to do it, but it don't add you no value, right? Because if I'm a homeowner, or if I'm a potential, home buyer looking for a house, and obviously I expect the house to have good plumbing. I expect it to have working HVAC. I expect it to have working electrical, right? I'm not going to pay extra because it has a working AC system. That is expected, right? So for that reason, those kind of things make it real easy to go over budget with those things too. And but depending on the property, you just have to build that cost into the deal. And if it works with those costs, then it's a good deal. But, that's something to be cognizant of. I personally aim for cosmetic level rehabs, right? So when I say cosmetic, that's essentially a value add rehab, because a cosmetic rehab is something like, you putting in, taking out the old cabinets, putting in new cabinets, putting in new floors, putting in granite counters, stainless steel appliances, things that people will walk in and be like, wow, I like that. Like if it looks good, they can see it. Something if it's just because you can't see it. I don't see the plumbing behind the walls. I don't see the foundation. I don't see all that stuff. I expect it to be there, so I'm not gonna pay extra for it. But like those cosmetic level things, you'll pay extra. So with that being said, I do not mess with houses with foundations. Learned my lesson. We learned our lesson on that last year. Definitely, I don't mess with that. That's just me personally. I like houses in established neighborhoods that were once master planned and don't have any, foundation issues, because I just hate messing with that. That's the dumbest thing to mess with on a house. So yes, with I think the last thing I would mention too with this is that, with residential houses, the values are based on similar houses in the area. So it's important to know not to rehab past what the neighborhood what the neighborhood is showing, right? So if I'm in, in a certain part of whatever, in the hood, in the third ward, whatever, in a non-gentrified area, then I'm not going to be putting, it's not to say these people don't deserve it or they shouldn't have it, but more than likely I'm not putting stainless steel and granite counters in a house in a neighborhood where none of the other houses have it. You can look at that as, well, you can be the one to stand out. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure you're getting the return on that investment, because each of those repairs has each repair you do, you can look at it as an investment. Certain ones will get you something back, some won't. And so that's important to know, so that you do not over rehab. That is a big thing. A lot of people have that HGTV syndrome where you just see like HGTV, it'll be going all out. especially because a lot of them are in California and they have to for nobody want. If you're on HGTV, who wants to see them? Just doing a freaking a little rental finish house. They don't want to see that. I want to see the stuff, but that's not real business. Don't get fooled by HGTV. That's TV at the end of the day. They got to show you the glamour. But when business, you gonna get these laminate counters and be good with this. So that's what I want to point out for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good points to take away from there. I think the first what I wanted to say is that you can be very creative and you can create very good deals based off of the way that you find things that other people miss, such as the third bedroom in a 1,200 square foot house. Yeah. Oftentimes, if the house is like oversized and it has like a couple bedrooms, they may be using a bedroom as an office. But if it has a closet, that qualifies as a bedroom, or you can build in the closet your own self. Those are the different ways to create uncover hidden value in a home.
And we just did that I just realized that on the latest flip we did, we closed off of the dining room because it was like a second living room. It already had a closet, closed it off, and sorry to interrupt, but yeah. No, but that's exactly it. Like, I think another thing was that one had a very similar floor plan to the one that we were doing previously. So we already saw like, hey, this can have another bedroom. The only thing that's different is this wall is opened up. Close that thing up. That's a bedroom now. Yeah. So I mean, that's just ways to spot value where other people may miss it. So if other people are looking for this unicorn deal, I'm looking for 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,200 square feet. And that means you pretty much already omitted the 2-bedroom, 1,200 square feet house that may have had a hidden third bedroom. So it's a very good opportunity to have creativity and creating a good deal. I think the second thing, though, or like the second good point you made was about don't over rehab the area. I saw this in real time, literally when I was back in Lafayette. I love saying that, back in Lafayette. I'm not there no more. Okay, but back in Indiana. Not Louisiana, yeah, definitely. Back when I was in Indiana, there was one person who went to the meetup that I used to go to, that had rehabbed a house, like way over rehabbed it. I think they tried to put it on the market for like $190,000, and in reality, the ARV in that particular area is right around like 140. And so nobody was about to buy that because all the other agents are telling their buyers like, oh no, they just over rehab this area like that. If you get an inspection if you get an appraisal report, they're not going to appraise it for that amount. So they're going to have to come down on asking price, or we're not going to even bother with them. And so that can be something you can run into if you over rehab an area. You may think that because you have diamond countertops in there, it means that you should get a higher ARV. But in reality, if the area doesn't call for that, it's not really going to add the value that you think it's adding. You're just pretty much spending more money. So be very cognizant of that. And I guess it's fair to like talk about how to get these renovation costs, because most people are going to be like, how much do these things cost? How much does it cost to add a bedroom? Stuff like that. Now, I won't say that we are experts in that ourselves, but I will say that who you can talk to that's an expert is the contractors. Mm-hmm. Take a contractor out to the house that you're looking to buy. If you ask them, hey, okay, so I based off the comps that I've seen, based off the comps that I've seen, I see that in this area they like to have laminate countertops, they like to have tile flooring, and so I want to come in doing those type of renovations. What would that cost me? And then try to get an itemized bid from the contractor to do those finishes. Don't go in there just saying, oh yeah, I want a rental, so I want rental type finishes. That's literally like going to McDonald's and saying, hey, man, I want some meat and some fries. And, like, okay, yeah, everybody do. What you want? Like, be more specific than that. So at least know what you're talking about a little bit. Like, go in there knowing a general idea of what you want. Now, you're not going to know everything right out the gate, of course, but at least go in with some idea in mind, especially, and use those comps to your advantage. The comps that you have been pulling for other houses that have sold, use that as like your baseline and be like, okay, I want these particular countertops. I want this particular flooring, this color paint. Know those type of things, and then the contractor can work with you a little bit more to get you the estimates and to be able to tell you like, I guess give you his personal recommendations on what else you can add into what you already have given to him. And then also, I think I mentioned before that the rehab is like arguably it's the second or third most important number when it comes to the BRRRR process. And so
this number can literally make or break your entire deal. So if the rehab comes back at 50,000 when you expect it to be at 30,000, you may either need to pass up on this deal or like talk with the contractor and say, okay, what can we take away and still be able to at least bring it up to the standards of the rest of the comps in this area. You don't have to you don't have to say this is a no deal just because the rehab came back too high. You also, I mean, another thing you can do is like go back and negotiate the purchase price and be like, hey man, so my contractor said it's going to take a little bit more work than what y'all were telling me it was going to take. So we may need to renegotiate this purchase price. If we can't, then I may have to walk away from the deal. And that's okay at the end of the day. Like every deal is not going to be a good deal. And I will tell you from experience, 99.99% of the deals out there are probably not good deals, especially in today's market. Now, back in 2008, I hear stories all the time. People talking about how they were just literally closing their eyes and just saying any, meeny, miny, mo, and picking one, and they was hitting a great deal. Yeah. And today's market, that's not really happening right now. I mean, it may come back, especially if the real estate market starts dropping. But right now, you're not going to see a lot of great bird deals or great real estate deals like that. You may have to have a little bit of money left in. So just be cognizant of that. And also, last thing I want to mention is that understand that this is very important to have reserves. Even if you think that the rehab estimate may be 50,000, it may very well come back to be something like, I don't know, there was a mold found under the sink. There was asbestos found in the attic. Something like that may pop up where you have to have, where it's like an unforeseen expense, something that you didn't see in the initial inspection. So it's always good to have extra reserves in place because you never know what may come up during a renovation. It's not saying, I'm not saying that to deter you, but I'm just like, it's like a word of caution. Like just because these numbers came out as whatever it was, the rehab numbers came out to a set number, don't think that the contractor is obligated to stay at that exact number, given that that other expenses could come up that y'all didn't see initially.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point too. And all that being said, I think what you should know is that, this step is very, very critical because every step is critical in a way, but the contractor and the rehab will make or break the deal in a way. And you'll go be SOL if you can't figure out how to solve it. And I know, I'm just thinking back on one of the properties last year where we was SOL when I'll just mention it just so y'all know that this really does happen. We had a project, and we haven't talked about this yet. Maybe we will at some point, but we had a project that was, we estimated rehab. In hindsight, this was a learning lesson, but in hindsight, it's like, bro, really? Did you really think the rehab was going to be that? But it was like a house that was like 1,300 square feet, complete gut. Contractor said she could do it for $45,000. Like 45? We good money then. We good to go. Start ripping up the walls. Literally, house was ripped to the studs.
That's the house I've ever seen in my life. When it was ripped, I'm like, bro, they should demo that thing all the way down.
Yeah, house was ripped to the studs. Turned out the foundation was completely, destroyed. The house was built in, and this is why I have my buying criteria now. The house was built in like, I don't know, it seemed like 1,000 years ago, but it was probably like the 30s or the 40s, if I remember correct, which might as well be 1,000 years ago in terms of real estate. But yeah, foundation was fried, and it was going to be $30,000 just to fix the foundation. Mind you, we had budgeted $5,000 for the foundation.
25,000 over budget. Either what do you do? Just either come out of pocket or sell it. So what we end up doing?
Hey, I tell you, I wasn't finna touch my pockets for all that. So but at the end of the day, we still lost a lot of money. We pretty much lost $30,000 off of that deal. In total. I mean, it helped us with taxes, but other than that, it was a nightmare. I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, yo, hey, this real estate thing, is this what they be doing? I was kind of, scratching the back of my head with that, but that stuff happens. It will happen. Do not think it cannot happen to you, because it will. That was the dumbest thing ever, but it will happen. And I know it's not even done happening to us, unfortunately. So, but that comes with the territory. You can't have a good and not take the foolishness with it. So, anyways, we spent a lot of time on that one. Let's go to the next one, which is rent. We're gonna try to speed these up a little bit, but they just
get shorter. I promise you, they get shorter each time. The process gets easier throughout. Yeah,
I would say those two were probably the hardest. Actually, buy and rehab. It's fitting that they're in the beginning. But yeah, the next step, renting. So with renting, for me, this is all about the cash flow, bro. If the cash don't flow, I do not go. That's my motto, bro. I mean, yo, we are in this to buy assets, not liabilities. We do not buy liabilities here. Do not buy a deal that will not cash flow. This goes back to analyzing a deal. You need to make sure when you analyze the deal on paper, on Excel, whatever you use, calculator, whatever you use, make sure you're not coming out of your pockets every month to have to own this property. If this property is costing you money, you just bought a liability. You did not buy an asset. And that's why your house isn't an asset, by the way, but that's a whole nother story.
Right.
But yes, make sure the cash flows. We don't buy deals that don't cash flow. It's dumb. Why would you do that? You're getting a negative ROI. Why would you do that? So that's how we look at that. And the big how you will be able to know if it cash flows is based off of your analysis. Now, we're not going to go into the analysis, but in terms of the rent, you need to, we'll talk about the income part, which is the rent. So you need to know what a realistic rent will be for that property. What we do to determine that is, I mean, for a preliminary analysis, we just use rentometer.com, rentometer. I don't know how you say it, but that's what we use to, it's like a free, online software that lets you analyze an area, based off of the number of bedrooms and the location, and it'll tell you what the median and average rents are in that area. And you can kind of make your decision based off of that. We typically go with the median rent, and if it cash flows at the median rent, we good money. Based off of all of the other expenses and things accounted. So with this step, though, I think one thing to mention with this step is that when you rent the property, as soon as the rehab is done, the goal is to get this thing rented immediately. Mm-hmm. It's no waiting. You want to rent it immediately. You're not gonna wait till we refinance. We're not gonna wait till we repeat. We're not gonna wait. We're gonna get this done immediately. And so, that's, I think, important to mention. So yes. Another way you can know the rents, just talk to a local property manager. Probably find one on Facebook or something. But yes, that's super important to know what these things are going to rent for, because that's going to make or break your investment. Because like I said, we don't buy liabilities. And in terms of like the actual management, that portion of it, you need to be accounting for that into your analysis, right? Because for me personally, I'll just speak on my behalf, right? I do not like dealing with tenants. I'll just be honest. I don't like dealing with tenants. But yeah, so what I have to do is, or what I think everyone should do is, you should be, accounting for property management, right? And what that cost will be. So make sure you talk to local property managers, see what they charge in order to rent or in order to manage your property. I manage all my properties right now on my own because I think you should do it yourself at first in order to learn, how it should be done and those kind of things. But obviously I don't plan to do it forever. So you want to make sure you're accounting for it in the beginning when you're analyzing a deal. It might be 10% of the rent. It might be 8%. Just make sure you're accounting for that. And that's very, very, very key.
Yeah, that's super key to think about property management, because honestly, like I mentioned earlier, if you are going to have 100 units, if you're going to be scaling your business, you do not want to be trying to manage each and every property. Now, I have seen some people, especially back in Indiana, there was one older guy who said, oh yeah, I've been managing all of my properties since back in 1980s, and I've just been doing it forever. That's not going to be me. I assure you that. Like I just envision a day where I'm able to sit on the beach and just check my phone and see income coming in, whether I'm going out to go collect it myself personally or not. And that's really, like, in essence, what this is all about, is trying to free up our time, regardless of if we are working or whether we're collecting or going to our tenants in order to collect the rent. But with that being said, you're not gonna get this cash flow without finding the tenants first. So I do want to briefly mention different ways. I think we talked about this also, with marketing for different tenants, or different ways that we go about finding tenants. But I just want to go over them again. So there are different ways that we've used in the past have included Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. You can list it on list your units for rent on there. Also, Zillow Renter Manager has probably been one of the better ones. I know Alex definitely loved that one. Now, just to be mindful, they started charging per week now. I think it's like $9.99 per week that they charge to have a listing up, and that's way higher than what we had. We had free $99. So I'm sorry to anybody who's listening to this now. We probably like a day late, dollar short on that, but that's still probably a very viable method to use. And then also like you can put a for rent sign in your front yard. That'd be another good way of like getting tenants up there. Well, getting tenants to call you and then like go through the screening process. And I guess going from there, now you got to find a qualified. Now the tenant has to be qualified. And I want to talk about like our qualifying standards that we use, because these are honestly like tried and true qualifying standards. We didn't like make these up out of thin air. These are like ones that you see that large property management companies use in order to reduce all of their headache that they have with tenants. So this is so first one is the income requirement. You ideally, it depends on the area. It depends on the area and the rent of how much you want to charge as well, how much you want them to be making in comparison to the rent. So for us, especially when I was renting out by bedroom, you at least want to see 3 times the monthly rent and income. So if the rent is $500, you want them to at least be making $1,500 a month. And that scales down as your rent amount scales up. So if you're charging $2,000 in rent, I highly doubt you're gonna find a whole bunch of people making $6,000 a month. It could happen, but I think that's gonna be you can be a little bit more lenient with that. Maybe like 2.5 times the monthly rent and your income, as opposed to 3 times as you start scaling up. And another big one, this definitely deters a lot of people, is their credit. You want to see a good credit score overall, like around we usually use 600 credit score or better. That deters a lot of people, but also decreases a lot of headache with missed rent payments. I think that's one of the most critical ones. Nope, matter of fact, nope. I'm taking that back because of the next one. No evictions. Now, if somebody's been evicted in the past, that means that I'm not gonna say everybody can be forgiven and get a second chance, but understand that if you are trying to run a business where you are not going to court and having to evict tenants, it's probably going to be in your best interest to avoid evictions when possible. And you also want to like find good references like from their previous landlords, because if they're telling you that they were just a problem tenant, do you want to inherit new problems? I mean, that's just a question for yourself to answer. If you want to, I mean, go ahead. You can give them a chance, but I'm not taking chances on my business. I'm going to make sure it's profitable and I'm able to be as remote as possible. And I'll get other ones like no smoking, maybe a no pet policy. Just depends on your tolerance level, because understand those often leave smells. And so if you are if you have somebody who's smoking all the time and somebody who has pets in your property, just know that you're gonna have to probably change the carpet out. If you have carpet, you're gonna have to repaint the walls afterwards, and that's gonna just be more work. So honestly, I just say nope. I don't want either one of those. No pets, no smoking. And if you can't get with that, there's a large tenant pool out there, so you can have the choice. Well, we have the choice in our case. If there's not a lot of tenants, you may have to sacrifice one of those too. I'm still not sacrificing the smoking when I rather sacrifice the pets. But in essence, like those are just a few of the things that we look at, and then you just perform a thorough background check overall, and that can be done using a software that we've used in the past called Rent Prep. And that checks both the background and the credit of the whatever potential tenant that you have. And you can just find different applications online. You can like really just search an application anywhere. Like if you want to say rental applications in Texas, for instance, you should be able to pull one up off of Google with no problem. And then you can change it up as need be to fit your qualifying standards.
So yeah, that's rent. So refinancing. This is the third R. Yeah. So this is essentially the recapturing of your money, right? This is the step where you can pull your cash back out and be able to use it again. So in this step, the appraisal is super key here. The appraisal by the appraiser is going to, make or break how much you can get out from your property, right? And it's not to say a low appraisal, will kill you. It's not going to kill you. But if you do want to pull all your money out, it is essential. Like we mentioned earlier, you might have to leave some of your cash in if the appraisal comes back. It's not the end of the world, right? Because at the end of the day, like you said, this doesn't need to be a perfect BRRRR. A perfect BRRRR is when you can pull all your cash out or even make cash. That's a unicorn BRRRR. Well, I would say in this market, a unicorn is even being able to pull your cash out. Just real quick off that example from earlier, instead of that 150K ARV, your appraisal comes back at 130, right? So 75% of that, remember 75% LTV, 75% of 130 is 98,000, right? So that means you have 12,000 left into it. 12,000 left into it based off of that $300 a month cash flow we were talking about. Remember, 300 times 12, 3,600 divided by 12,000, 30% RI. That's your consolation prize. Congrats. So, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. No, the issue might be having to pay back a private lender or a private investor. Then you need to be able to pull that cash out. And that's why we say you need to be able to make sure, if you're not using your own cash, you better make sure your numbers is spot on, because it's no room for I thought I need my money. So you better make sure you can do that. But honestly, in order for this to like really just be a bad, awful situation, you would just have to be completely wrong on the ARV, which is, I don't know what you did. You didn't do anything we just said. If you you messed up the ARV that badly to where you just lose money, that's how good the strategy is. Like, you got to just be a monkey to be able to not do this successfully. A monkey could probably get an ARV actually.
Nah, man. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's so critical. We keep on talking back to ARV because that's like literally the key biggest number in order to make this deal work. Because that's going to be, in essence, that's going to dictate if you can pay back your lender, if you can get a loan that's going to pay back, that's going to allow you to pull your money back out and do this process over and over again. And I guess when you are looking at different banks to use for refinancing, it's important to keep in mind that each and every bank has different terms. And so if you go to one bank, they may tell you that they'll loan at 75%, while another one may say they'll loan at 80% ARV of the house, of the value of the home. And so just understand that each bank has their own different terms. And just because one says that they won't lend this amount doesn't mean that the next one won't. So it's important to at least be willing to go to 5 to 10 different banks just so that you can find somebody who meets your terms. And on top of that, some banks may also even mention that they have a seasoning period. And I just want to familiarize people with that term just in case they ever hear it. Because we personally haven't heard it before because we use a lender that partners with a hard money lender. So we haven't really ran into that. But in essence, what we're seeing is that a seasoning period is like they want to see the property rented out for 6 months or 6 to 12 months before they allow a refinance loan to be issued onto that property. That's not, like I said before, that's not all banks. So some banks may just waive that all the way and say, yeah, we'll refinance your home right away after we see 1 month of rent or something, or just right away with no questions asked. So you just have to go to different banks and see what they offer.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why, in regards to the banks too, that they might, just because different banks offer different things, some might want to see that you have some cash reserves to be able to, because at the end of the day, them loaning that money is an investment on their part. They want to be able to know that in case something happens, you have some cash at least to be able to fix it in their investment. They're just not going to get, they want to get their mortgage payment, and they know they only get their mortgage payment if the house can be rented. And in order for the house to be rented, it has to be livable. So if something happened, they need to make sure that you will be able to take care of it. So just be aware. This might be a situation where you have to call 30 banks. Look, you might have to do that. That's just what it is. So yeah, that's the refinance. I think that was the shortest one so far. So the last step, though, the last R, is the repeat of the process. A lot of people don't even actually consider this one just because it's just a repeat. Right. But I think it's very key, actually, because this is, we talk about the fishing or the boomerang or whatever. This is what makes it happen, right? So, but in order, I think the way I think about repeat is kind of like, obviously you're being able to do it, start the process all over again. Because you pull the money out, you pull your 75% out, then you can take all that cash and go do it again. Same money, right? So, but the thing the thing I think about this part, because at this point, after you've done it, now you do it a couple of times, whatever, you keep repeating it, you're going to create systems for it to be able to, make it systematized, right? Because systems are what is going to make this process a lot easier. The fifth time you do this you should not go through the same things you went through the first or the second time, right? Because you should have learned and you should have implemented systems in place that will allow you to kind of make this process a lot more streamlined, right? Because at the end of the day, you do not want to be spending all your time figuring out if a deal is worth it. Each of these steps in the BRRRR, that's what this R is for. It's for systemizing each step, right? The buy, you should know exactly, what you're looking for, right? So you need to know in the buy, you need to know the area. The area, the location. For me, I know, okay, I'm looking for established master plan neighborhoods, right? I need to know the type of property, right? If I'm, whatever, let's say I'm looking for single family houses, right? I need to know the price. Oh, I know I don't want my ARV to be more than 200K because that means 75% LTV loan. It's going to have a higher mortgage. Rent might not be able to cover that, might not cash flow as much, yada, yada, yada. A lot of things can happen, right? So I know my price point needs to be ARV below 200K. Rent, I know I need to know I get this amount of rent to cash flow this much, right? So if I want to cash flow $300, I know I need to be able to get this much rent. Now, that being said, anytime, obviously more has to go into this. You get your deal pipeline. Anytime a deal comes in, you should be able to, know, does it fit my criteria within a couple minutes? Like the first time, it might take you a few hours on your first BRRRR deal to figure out if it fits. But, after you do it a couple times, bro, you should be able to know after 30 seconds. Not to say it's not bad if you don't, but like at that point, you will have learned. And that's why I said the BRRRR strategy allows you to master every part of real estate, because you will know in 30, we can look at a deal now and know, especially monoline, you can know like in really like a few seconds if I want to buy this deal. And so that's like that. And then the rehab part, you should have systems in place. Oh, okay, I got the deal. We accept it. I put in an offer, got it under contract with my contingencies, have my contractor go out there, walk the property, get me my estimate. That's already systematized. The contractor already knew to do that. Oh, rent. Oh, I already had my property manager. He already, found out what it's going to rent for. He already knows if it's even something he wanted to or she wanted to even, manage, right? Or I already know exactly what the rent's going to be. That part's already systematized. Refinance. Already got pre-approved with my bank. All that's all good to go. They all know. They know that, hey, after a few months, I'm going to be refinancing this with you. We good money on that end, right? Every part of this system will be systematized. And that's what this R step is really about, because essentially what it's doing is it's making you create a business. It's helping you create a business. That's what this step is about. It's turning real estate into a business. If you are still doing the fifth deal the way you're doing the first, something's wrong.
Yep, and that's exactly what I was thinking of as far as like the business part, because in essence, when you have a business running that's successful, that means everybody's happy. That means that the property manager, he or she is able to get their rents per month, or no, able to get their cut of the rent per month, because it's already after that after the place has been rented out, they're taking their cut. The contractor got their money from the renovation costs. Like they've already got all their money. They're leaving out happy. Same thing with both the refinance lender. They're able. They got their loan out there, and they collecting rent. They're collecting their mortgage every month. And then lastly, you as well as the lender, like the initial lender, like the hard money lender, for instance, they got their money back from the refinance. So by the time you got to the repeat step, you have learned every step of the way, like how to get everybody, how to make everybody happy. And that's you being the centerpiece of that entire business. And so now, as you continuously do this over and over, you're not only creating a better system, but you're also building relationships along the way. So like, for instance, with that lender, like with the initial lender, like the hard money lender, you may be able to even just negotiate better terms, because as you go through each and every deal and they see repeated success, they may be like, oh, I don't have to charge you as much in interest because I already know that I'm gonna get my money back, and we're gonna have more volume with you as opposed to somebody else that may be a one and done. And so that allows you to really be able to negotiate your terms, be able to get a lot better deals as a result, because you're showing proven success. And that's like, in essence, what repeat is all about. Repeating is refining the process and being able to help you scale your business by creating better systems and building better relationships with the people around you.
Exactly. Great point. And two, this is, the thing about this whole BRRRR thing, man, this strategy is crazy because it can really let you, build a huge real estate portfolio relatively fast, like compared to a lot of other methods, right? And like I said, this is something that applies to all asset classes. Whether it's single family, small multifamily, apartment complexes. Actually, this is something that was actually derived from apartment complex, because in a way, all, if you've ever heard of flipping apartments, it's essentially a BRRRR deal, right? Because these people, they'll syndicate an apartment deal, a 200 unit apartment complex, and slowly, to buy it, they fix it up, refinance it, pay all the investors back, and then they'll, whatever, they might sell it after a few years. That's essentially what this is. So, it's a great way, and I think it works beautifully with these small single family houses, right? Because a portfolio of single family houses. This is, I think, I know David Green does this. He has like a huge portfolio of single families, and he just BRRRR'd them, right? And a portfolio of single family houses that have equity because you BRRRR'd, and you have a 25% equity in 30, 40 houses that can easily be converted into large apartment buildings. And that's essentially what my strategy is for building my real estate empire portfolio. I'm not necessarily keeping a lot of these houses that we're working on, but we're either, that equity is still being captured. It's either being captured in a refinance or it's being captured in a sale. And that's just essentially a flip. So it's a little different strategy, but essentially all I'm doing is taking that same equity that you'd be keeping in the property, and I'm taking it out, using it, having it in cash, right? And then using that to buy apartments. You do that over and over. You flip enough houses, you use that to buy apartments. It's the same thing, right? And you apply the same things, except it's the exit strategy that changes. Instead of me refinancing it, I'm going to sell it. And actually, I'll actually make more than I would. Refinancing it because it's a sell. But yeah, that's essentially what happens. And that's how I plan to scale and build my portfolio. So yes, that's the BRRRR strategy.
Yep, and just my closing comments. Now I think we've gone way over time, but just to close it all off, what you were really describing is like just the process of flipping in order to either create reserves for yourself for future renovations or for future rental property projects, or just to be able to fund your rental property projects for larger scale projects in general, like multifamily as opposed to single family. But I think in essence, this strategy works either way, whether you're trying to perform a flip or perform or try to obtain rental property. I think in a flip, the acronym would probably just be changed to BRRRR, like buy, rehab, sell, which is in essence just flipping. But you're pretty much just allowing yourself to gain the reserves in order to, like I said, either have reserves or be able to afford those larger scale apartment complexes. But I also want to say that I don't want people to think this is the only method that they can use in order to obtain wealth by investing in real estate, because you may very well be trying to fit a square peg into a round hole if this is the only way that you think is going to allow you to have success in real estate. And also understand that each and every deal that you get may not be 100% perfect BRRRR. But like you may not be able to pull out all 100% of the money you've invested in order through the refinance loan. But that doesn't mean that it's still not a good deal, especially in today's market. You may be able to settle for taking out 80% of your profit, like 80% of the money that you've put into the deal, and be okay with that, as long as you're getting that nice sizable return on your investment. It's still better than putting your money into that Chase Bank account and getting that 0.1% interest. I think this should be looked on more so as like a tool in your toolbox. There may be house hacking strategies. There's probably seller financing strategies. There's many different investment strategies, and BRRRR is just one of them. And so just utilize this and then be able to implement it when the opportunity presents itself. It's that preparation meeting opportunity. That's creating your own luck. If you have enough tools in your toolbox, you'll be able to attack any problem that's presented to you, just depending on what the situation.
100%, man. Woo! This was probably the longest episode.
This is it.
I honestly thought it would be a lot shorter. But I think we might have to break this up in two pieces, in two parts. And if you're listening to this right now, obviously you're listening to the second part. But yeah, both of these episodes, if you didn't hear the first part, then please go back, re-listen to the first part, because this is both of them are very critical. I'm not sure. Definitely go listen to that. Do not listen to this until you listen to that, because that part will probably tie this part together. So yes. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Money Monopolizers podcast. New episodes will be released every Thursday and will be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Just search Money Monopolizers wherever you listen to podcasts. We hope you learned something of value today. If you did, please, we'd appreciate if you rated us 5 stars and left us a review on Apple Podcasts. Those reviews and those ratings help us scale and reach more people, which is what we're trying to do. You can also find out more info about us on Twitter at The Monopolizers or on IG at Money Monopolizers. We post informative content on there that'll keep you engaged, so check that out and share those posts. But until then, we out of here.
You've been listening to the Money Monopolizers podcast, helping you take control of your financial destiny. To learn more about how you can be in control of your money, visit moneymonopolizers.com. We'll catch you next time when Alex and Marlon share more personal finance and wealth creation tips with you. Now it's time to take action.